And joining us right now is John Fund. He's a national affairs columnist for National Review and co-author of Obama's Enforcer, Eric Holder's Justice Department. John Fund, Eric Holder has announced his resignation. Who will be Obama's enforcer now?
I don't know, but I think we're still going to have Holderism without Holder.
What do you mean by that?
The policies are going to remain the same. The president has a clear vision of what America is, and his attorney general is going to implement it. And it's going to be very interventionist, very regulatory. I think it's going to be marinated in racial thinking, and it's going to continue to battle things like voter ID laws, which 70% of Americans support and which have been declared constitutional by the Supreme Court. In other words, it's going to be the kind of guy that Al Sharpton would want, and he says he's in negotiations with the White House about who it should be.
Yeah, your article with your partner there, Hans von Spakovsky, this weekend, it suggests that. Why don't you explain what you mean? You said that Holder and his legacy enables Sharpton's "I have a scheme" agenda for civil rights. Explain what that means. What specifically? Because even when the president talks about it, John, it sounds like he's upholding Martin Luther King's vision of equal protection under the law. But what really is happening here?
There are a lot of wonderful people in the communities of America trying to bridge the racial divide, trying to increase tolerance and understanding. Al Sharpton is not one of them. But Politico recently quoted a top White House aide as saying, yeah, we built up Sharpton. We had to have someone to work with in the African-American community, and we didn't like Jesse Jackson. So they helped create and legitimate Al Sharpton, who has one of the worst records of racial polarization, demagoguing, and race baiting in American history, and is a completely outrageous partner when it comes to healing this country's wounds.
You know, Juan Williams over at Fox News is a guy that I know, I like, I respect him immensely as an individual. But he said this on Twitter: Eric Holder deserves to be celebrated as the Attorney General who rebuilt a broken Justice Department and restored its reputation. He goes on to say criticism of Holder over scandals, and he uses quotation marks around the word scandals, revealed much about the administration's more about the critics than it did about Holder at large. Any thoughts on what my friend Juan Williams has said?
Well, Williams also admits in that same piece that the Justice Department bears its share of responsibility for the complete polarization that's taken place there. Look, don't believe me. Believe the Inspector General of the Justice Department, who found that the Civil Rights Division there was managed horribly, that there had been active discrimination in and harassment of conservative employees in the department. No one who was engaged in that kind of bullying behavior was punished. Ask the Inspector General about the lack of cooperation that he's gotten from the Justice Department in trying to uncover waste, fraud, and abuse in the department. Ask the 19 Democrats, one out of 10 House Democrats, who voted to hold Eric Holder in contempt of Congress for refusing to turn over documents in the Fast and Furious scandals. Those are legitimate observers who have problems with Eric Holder's management and judgment of the Justice Department.
All right, so we know that when the Ferguson thing broke out, some 40 FBI agents were dispatched to Ferguson at the direction of the Department of Justice. We had a beheading of a guy who had some who apparently was saying Islamic phrases while he undertook this heading at a place in Oklahoma a few days ago. And the local police have said, we don't really know if this is workplace violence. We really don't know if there's a terrorism connection. And they've asked the FBI to come in. Do you have some sense of how the Justice Department will react, given what they did in Ferguson?
Well, in Ferguson, they sent Al Sharpton to the funeral, and he, mow-mowed the audience there. Look, I understand the tensions in Ferguson, and there had to be some way to minimize them. Holder probably did some good going there, but this is an unprecedented intervention of the federal government into local law enforcement, and it's highly selective. And that's the whole problem. Eric Holder has been watching President Obama's political back more than he has been protecting the rule of law during his tenure.
Hey, John Fund, can I just switch gears just for a quick second? We're looking at the midterms coming up 5 weeks from tomorrow, and we've been analyzing some of the races, and if the Republicans are going to win the Senate, they're going to win some races that traditionally they haven't won before, talking about Louisiana and some other states where, let me be as judicious as possible, where there's a lot of corruption. And, John, you know a lot about election law and a lot about these close races and what ends up happening. Do you have any concern about some of these closer races in these states that have a history? And what do you think the GOP should be doing to preempt some challenges like we saw, in Minnesota with Al Franken?
Colorado has one of the truly awful election laws that were put into place by a Democratic legislature 2 years ago. All ballots in Colorado are going to be mail ballots. You can register and vote the same day in Colorado. There's very little ballot security. It's an accident or a fraud waiting to happen. Illinois has decided to have same-day voter registration for one election only this November. Then it goes away, and that will allow people to go into an election office, register with very little ID, and then vote at the same time. Their vote goes into the pile. It can never be pulled out and found as to whether or not it was fraudulent.
Wait, those aren't
states that are a real problem.
Those aren't provisional ballots. They get to go in, register, and then vote, and that's an official vote.
Yes.
Oh.
And of course, Louisiana, that's a state well known for its voter integrity.
It's gotten a little better. Hurricane Katrina has meant new election officials, new bureaucracy, and a slightly better system.
Okay, and what's your prediction, though, John? You're pretty good at taking a look at the forecasts and taking a look at the individual races.
Well, the problem is this. Wherever you see an incumbent who's below 50%, it doesn't really matter whether they're ahead of their challenger. If they're below 50% and that persists till Election Day, they're unlikely to win because people will either break for the challenger or stay home. So I look at the polls around the country as we shift. The pollsters are now polling likely voters rather than registered voters.
Right.
I see about 53 Republican seats.
53.
53? Wow.
That would be a pretty good pickup.
That's a pretty bold prediction. All right, John Fund. It's always good to have you.
Thank you. And the book is Obama's Enforcer, Eric Holder's Justice Department.
Yes, it is Obama's Enforcer. He's on his way out. But as John Fund just told us, the enforcement agenda continues from the Justice Department, or lack thereof.
53.
Yeah, that's quite a bold prediction.
Yeah.
We shall see.